I still remember the exact sound of his voice when he said it. Low, cold, and final. You have 48 hours to choose, Sarah. Family, or everything else. If you walk away, don't expect to come back. My name is Sarah, and for 28 years I believed my father was the greatest man I'd ever know. He built an empire from nothing, a respected real estate developer, a pillar of the community, the man who always told everyone how much he sacrificed for his only daughter. I grew up in a beautiful house, went to the best schools, and smiled beside him at every charity gala. People called us the perfect father-daughter team, but perfection has cracks. And mine started showing the day I found the first hidden file. It was late at night in his home office. I was looking for a contract he'd asked me to review for our family company. Instead, I found folders within folders, payments routed through offshore accounts, investors who never received what they paid for, and worst of all, names of people he'd quietly ruined when they asked too many questions. My father wasn't just ambitious, he was ruthless. And he had hidden it all behind the image of a loving, self-made man. My hands were shaking as I copied everything onto a flash drive. I told myself I must be wrong. This couldn't be the same man who used to read me bedtime stories and promise he'd always protect me. The next morning I confronted him. I thought he would explain. I thought he would be sorry. Instead, he looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize and gave me that ultimatum. 48 hours to choose loyalty to him, to the family name, or lose everything. My position in the company, my inheritance, even the relationships he controlled within our extended family. He said it so calmly, like he was discussing the weather. As if destroying my future was just another business decision. I stood there in his grand living room, the same room where he'd thrown my graduation party, and felt my entire world crack open. The man I had loved and trusted more than anyone had just threatened me. His own daughter. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment of my life, wondering how many lies I had lived inside. Every photo, every speech, every "I'm so proud of you" suddenly felt poisoned. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe, but in that pain, something else began to stir, a quiet, burning resolve I had never felt before. Word count so far: 460. The first 24 hours after his threat were the hardest. I walked around in a daze, replaying every childhood memory, searching for signs I had missed. The way he always changed the subject when I asked about certain business partners. The tense phone calls he took in another room. The times he told me not to worry my pretty little head about company details. I was never meant to know the truth. I was meant to stay the grateful, obedient daughter who would one day inherit his kingdom without ever questioning how it was built. On the second day, I met with our longtime family lawyer, someone I thought I could trust. I showed him just enough to see his reaction. His face went pale. He didn't deny it. He simply said, "Sarah, some stones are better left unturned. Your father has powerful friends. This could destroy more than just him." That was the moment the last piece of my heart broke. Even the people around us knew. They had always known. I was the only one living in the fairy tale. I spent that night crying until there were no tears left. I grieved the father I thought I had. I grieved the future I was supposed to inherit. But with every sob, the grief slowly transformed into something sharper: clarity. He didn't just betray me with that 48-hour threat. He had been betraying me and so many others for years, all while wearing the mask of a devoted family man. By hour 40, I stopped crying. I started planning. I reached out to a trusted investigative journalist I had met at one of those galas. I didn't give her everything at first. I needed to be sure. But the more we talked, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a few bad deals. This was a pattern. People had lost homes. Retirement savings had vanished, and my father had walked away richer every single time. The final hours of his ultimatum ticked down. He texted me once, "Time's almost up. I hope you make the right choice." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I whispered to myself, I chose truth. I chose the people he had hurt. And I chose to stop protecting his name. The night before the deadline ended, I sat in my car outside his office building with the flash drive in my hand. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Part of me still wanted to run back inside, hand it to him, and beg for things to go back to normal. But I knew normal had never been real. Word count so far, 1050. I sent the files at 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes before his 48 hours ran out. The story broke 2 days later, not as a screaming scandal at first, but as a quiet, devastating investigation that slowly pulled back the curtain on everything. One article became 3, then 5, then the major networks picked it up. I watched my father's carefully built empire begin to crumble in real time. His business partners distanced themselves. Investors demanded answers. Old friends who once sang his praises suddenly had no comment. The man who had threatened me with total isolation found himself standing alone in the spotlight he once loved so much. He called me exactly once after the story broke. His voice was no longer cold and commanding. It was broken, almost pleading. "How could you do this to your own father?" I answered softly. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" He never replied. The consequences unfolded exactly as they should. Investigations began. Lawsuits followed. The perfect image he had spent decades crafting was gone. His name, once spoken with respect, now carried a shadow. Through it all, I stayed quiet in public. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth did the work. Months later, I stood in a much smaller apartment, looking out at a city that no longer felt like it belonged to him. I had lost money, status, and the illusion of family, but I had gained something far more valuable: my voice, my integrity, and my freedom. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: family should never be a threat. Love should never come with an ultimatum and a countdown clock. When someone forces you to choose between them and your own soul, they've already shown you who they really are. I chose me. And even though it hurt more than I can describe, I've never regretted it. Sometimes the strongest thing a daughter can do is stop protecting the man who was supposed to protect her. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, know that you're not alone. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's simply refusing to carry their lies anymore. Word count so far, 1380.